The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is David Icke, the English writer, broadcaster, and public speaker, known since the 1990s as a professional conspiracy researcher, calling yourself a full-time investigator into who and what is really controlling the world. You are the author of 22 books and have lectured in over 25 countries, speaking live for up to 10 hours to huge audiences, filling stadiums like Wembley Arena. You are here for the 5th time this year to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic and global lockdown, the imposition and acquiescence of mandatory face masks, the blatant and unethical digital censorship of information, the looming mandatory vaccine agenda, and the upcoming transhumanism and artificial intelligence takeover. Your new book, The Answer, reveals the global power structures that run the world and how we can free ourselves of the illusions that control human society. David, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you, Brian.
Great to have you back. Before we start, I want just to announce that we are streaming on our brand new Digital Freedom platform, which is a censorship-free independent broadcasting system that is of the people, by the people, and for the people, and available exclusively on our website at freedomplatform.tv. Can everyone watching us now please share this link via the sidebar to any and all of your social media channels? Let me repeat that. Can everyone watching now please share this link via the sidebar to any and all of your social media channels? This is important. Simply ask your friends and family to give us 15 minutes and then they can decide. For our last conversation, Rose Icke Ford, nearly 75% of our viewers came from other people sharing this episode link. So please share this now to all of your contacts and platforms. David, I pledge to you and everyone watching us that none of this conversation will be edited, censored, removed, or banned, and that anyone in the world can watch the full version of this episode free at freedomplatform.tv/Icke, thanks to the generous donations of over 34,000 people around the world that we affectionately call the London Real Army. For anybody wanting to become a founding member of the Digital Freedom Platform, they can visit freedomplatform.tv/give to donate and fight with us on the front lines to protect our human rights. Here at London Real, we've been a platform for free speech since 2011. And David, I'm excited to have you here today. I want to begin by bringing everyone up to speed on the recent events and our 4 previous conversations in 2020. On March 18th, we sat down and broadcast Rose Icke 1, our first conversation of the year, where I asked you to make sense of the early days of the coronavirus pandemic and global market crash as the UK was not yet on total lockdown. In this conversation, you spoke about COVID-19 and your concept of problem, reaction, solution. You questioned the motives of the World Health Organization, and you warned of a looming Hunger Games society. This episode immediately went viral and was watched over 10 million times by people from around the world who were keen to listen to a different narrative than that of the mainstream media and governments. Then, on April 6th, we broadcast our second conversation of 2020, Rose Icke 2, that became the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day, only behind that of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. With 65,000 concurrent viewers, nearly 4 times the previous live stream, this episode was expected to reach 40 million views, making it the largest video podcast in human history. In that conversation, you described the COVID-19 misdiagnosis and the misclassifications of deaths, dangerous 5G technology rollouts, the upcoming vaccine agenda, economic totalitarianism, and the weaponization of fear. Unfortunately, just 30 minutes later, while you were still at our studios, the entire live stream episode was deleted and banned on YouTube with no explanation and no communication to us. 24 hours later, after the BBC broke the news, our representatives at YouTube accused you of being a quote-unquote COVID-19 denier and subsequently deleted and banned an additional 50 of your videos and my personal vlogs from YouTube. Next, Instagram, Facebook, and Dropbox all followed suit by deleting and banning our videos, and then London Real was completely deplatformed from LinkedIn and Vimeo without explanation. But we fought back and continued to host both episodes, Rose Icke 1 and Rose Icke 2, on our website to tens of millions of viewers, and we still do, despite sustaining multiple highly sophisticated malicious attacks to our technology platforms. Around the same time, David, you were completely deplatformed from both Facebook and YouTube for producing, quote, health misinformation that could cause physical harm. Of course, we all know that if this policy was universally applied, all of mainstream media and most of governments would have been deplatformed long ago. Next, the UK regulator Ofcom, who is controversially also in charge of issuing 5G licenses in this country, censored the broadcast of Rose Icke 1 on the television channel London Live. Ofcom said it, quote, risked causing significant harm to viewers. At this point, we had had enough and decided we could no longer rely on a third party for live stream broadcasting, nor accept the imposition of their agendas on our editorial policy. As I've said before, David, we're not here to take part, we're here to take over. So we began crowdfunding our digital freedom platform, which has now raised over $1.3 million worldwide from over 34,000 members of the London Real Army, fighting for our most basic human right, freedom of speech. This has been an unbelievable vote of confidence in our fight against the tyranny of censorship. On May 3rd, we successfully live broadcast Rose Icke 3 on this brand new digital freedom platform to over 1.366 million unique viewers, making it the biggest live stream of a conversation in human history and a tremendous victory over the dark forces of censorship and oppression. 6 weeks later, on June 14th, we broadcast Rose Icke 4, where we found ourselves in a brand new world order. The media and government agenda had changed 180 degrees from COVID-19 pandemic and global lockdown to riots and protests surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement, their unidentified fundraisers, and their ulterior motives. We witnessed anger, violence, the tearing down of monuments, and calls to defund the police across the USA and throughout the world. Which brings us to today and the broadcast of Rose Icke 5, where the world has gone a major shift once again. We're seeing a massive spike in newly reported COVID-19 cases in America, Brazil, and Asia. Meanwhile, in Europe, it's preparing itself for another total lockdown, with my sources inside the government indicating that France, Germany, and the UK will soon completely seal off its borders. We've also seen the imposition of mandatory face masks required everywhere from public transport to shops, even schools. We soon expect masks to be required outdoors in most major countries around the world. Meanwhile, Moderna, the pharmaceutical company with ties to Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci, is conducting phase 3 human clinical trials on a coronavirus vaccine with dangerous side effects, yet they continue to pour billions of dollars of citizen taxpayer money into these treatments. We see lawlessness taking place in major American cities, while police forces are powerless to act because of budget cuts or even worse, their own criminal prosecution for defending the law. David, the world is approaching a state of complete Armageddon. We desperately need the answer from you today. Before I start, I want to ask again for everybody watching this to please take a few seconds and share this link now via the sidebar to any and all of your social media channels. Simply ask your friends and family to give us 15 minutes and they can decide. David, as I mentioned before, the past 5 months have been some of the most challenging in my entire life. My reputation has been questioned in the press. My business is under threat. My basic human right to express myself is being denied every single day. But this has also been the most empowering time of my life, with millions of people from around the world rising up and voicing their support for our movement. As a result, I've never been so steadfast in my convictions to fight for the basic fundamental right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And that is why we are here broadcasting today. David, thank you for your 30 years of tireless work and for your own conviction to fight on. As I've said before, I might not agree with everything you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So, where do we begin? Perhaps we start with our location. We are not at London Real Studios, David. We are on the Isle of Wight, your home, because you refused to acquiesce, to kowtow, to comply with government requests for you to wear a face mask on the ferry trip to London. Why, David?
Well, I've refused to acquiesce to any of the diktats since this started. When they pushed in the lockdown and said in Britain you can only go out once a day, I went out when I wanted. And I said, indeed in one of our interviews, if the authorities want to come to me, people in uniform want to come to me and give me a credible explanation for why going out once a day and going near no one, and going out 10 times a day and going near no one, can possibly be more harmful to anyone 10 times than one, then I might consider acquiescing to their, or agreeing to their ludicrous rule. But no one ever knocked my door. And as I've traveled around England, mainland England, in the last few weeks, I've refused to give my name and details in track and trace to anybody. I've refused to put hand sanitizer on to get into a shop when, having seen 2/3 of the back of the bottle telling me how dangerous it is, and the Food and Drug Administration in America now issuing a list of 75 brands you shouldn't use because it's too dangerous, can cause blindness and death. So I've not acquiesced to that. And I certainly wasn't going to acquiesce to the mask. And what's brought this about is we have 2 ferry companies to and from the mainland. And what they've been running, I mean, this just shows how ludicrous, contradictory, and insane it is. During this period of the lockdown, when you crossed with one called White Link, you had to stay in your car. You couldn't get out and go in the lounge. And because they said, that was the safest thing to do. All right. So you sit in your car and you don't have to do anything else. You just sit there and then drive off. Another company, Red Funnel, they were running certain routes, certain times every day where you had to stay in your car. So when this mandatory mask on public transport came in, you could still get across without wearing a mask, stay in your car. And what's happened? The 2 ferry companies have just stopped staying in your car, which is supposed to be, they've been telling us through the lockdown, the safest thing to do. Now you have to get out into the lounge and wear a mask. Not a chance. And let me tell you how ludicrous it is. In Britain, they've just announced that if you are coming back from Spain from holiday, you have to isolate for 14 days. The White Link Ferry Company, I did the other one, but the White Link Ferry Company has just said, if you're returning to the Isle of Wight from a holiday in Spain, you must tell us because we're going to make sure you have to stay in your car. So hold on a minute. So you're saying, because it's more dangerous coming back from Spain, yeah, they have to stay in their car. Yeah, because that's the safest thing to do, right? Yeah. But everyone else now has to get out of the car, wear a mask in the lounge. It's incredible. And I was the first mask refusenik in Britain on public transport. I have to be because of the timing. When we did our last interview, I came from the studio down to Portsmouth to get the 1 minute to 12 boat back to the Isle of Wight. And I'm the only passenger. Everyone else is in their cars, and therefore on the crossing, they're staying in their cars. That's what they did at that time. I'm the only foot passenger. I'm the only one in the lounge, right? So it's a minute to midnight, and the rule, mask on public transport, including ferries, came in at midnight. So I'm standing there, and I watch all these people walk off, passengers. No masks, because it's not yet midnight. So we've got this extraordinarily stupid virus that attacks you by, the time of day and the date on the calendar. So they walk off, and I go to walk on. And they said, no, you got to wear a mask. I said, first of all, it's not midnight yet, so you can't enforce that. So I walked on, and I walk up into the lounge. This is quite a big ferry, this one. There's no one else to be seen, just little me. And they actually gave me a mask, and I took it with me because it was a bit of a trophy, the first mask to be issued. And about halfway across, because the ferry left, halfway across, captain comes down from the bridge and she said, I just want to talk to you about the mask. I said, okay, yeah, go on. He was a nice chap. He said, I can understand, he said, why you won't wear a mask when you're the only person in the lounge, right? But he said, when we get the other side, would you put the mask on just to walk off the ship? I said, to walk off the ship, past all those people sitting in their cars when I'm the only passenger. You must be joking, mate. Of course I'm not going to wear a bloody mask. And I walked off the ship without a mask. But then they kicked in this, you can't stay in your car. You must have a mask on the ship. And at that point, I said, okay, I'm staying on the Isle of Wight then. And I will not acquiesce. I have my food delivered now. There are shops on the Isle of Wight that are intelligent enough not to push this stuff. And so you can go in without a mask and get some stuff. But you see, two things. Given what I'm doing and what I've been doing for 30 years, and part of that is encouraging people not to acquiesce to the impositions by authority and the deletions of freedom. You know, I'm not someone who says, oh no, I'm not going to follow this law, I'm not going to follow that law. I look at it and I say, well, okay, is it justified? And if it's justified, that's fair enough. I'll go with that. But when you are imposing things, not for anyone's health, and we'll get into this, but purely for means of control and behavior modification, which is what this is really all about. It's not being driven by health. It's not being driven by doctors. It's been driven by psychologists. You know, there's a lady in Britain called Professor Susan Icke, and she is one of these scientific advisors to the government. Goodness knows why. She's also a member of the Communist Party of Great Britain, appropriately, I would say, given this is all about bringing in forms of Marxism. And she's been pushing this mandatory mask agenda. Well, she's not a professor of health. She's a professor of psychology. And that's what's driving this. So when I look at this mask situation and I say, I can see that this is not about health, this is about control. And it's about changing the nature of human behavior. And also destroying the sense of individuality. Because what they want with this AI connection to the human brain, which they're talking about and want to bring in around 2030 is the year they've been giving. They want to create a hive human mind where basically you're just a computer terminal with no real individuality. And one of the stepping stones to this is to put masks on people's face. And your individuality's gone. Your humanity's gone. I was on a radio show the other day, and I said to the host, you know, I wonder how many people have walked past people they know when they're in a mask and haven't recognized them. And the host said, it happened to me today. So you're driving people apart, and it's about behavior modification. So I'm someone who's been exposing this for 30 years and encouraging people to not acquiesce with their own enslavement. So there's no way I'm going to acquiesce with my own enslavement. I mean, what credibility would that be? So I'm not doing any of it. And, you know, if they keep coming towards me with more and more impositions, to the point where, and it is the agenda, if they think they can get away with it, they'll go for it. It's in the script that everyone has to wear a mask outside their home. In fact, there are lunatics in authority in places like Florida who are telling people to wear masks in their own home if someone's there that's not usually there. But if they do that, if they say you can't leave your home without wearing a mask, well, obviously, I'm going to leave my home because I'm not going to be put under house arrest by a bunch of psychopaths and idiots, which is the combination that's doing this. So I will go out and I won't wear a mask. And what happens then happens. If they fine me, I won't pay the fine. Well, we'll put you in jail. Well, go ahead, because I ain't acquiescing to you. Because I do understand, Brian, I completely understand why people look at this situation with the masks and they say, I know it's nonsense. I know why they're doing it. But I've got to get to work to feed my family. I've got to do this to feed my family. Completely understand that. And I'm not saying because I'm doing it that everyone else should do it and you're all wrong if you don't do what I'm doing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying my personal choice for two reasons. A, if I'm encouraging people not to acquiesce with their own enslavement, then the last thing I need to do is do it, or ever would. And secondly, I'm doing it for my own self-respect. You know, some psychopaths in the shadows, through idiots in government, are going to tell me I have to wear a face nappy or a face diaper, as you would say in America. What? Not a chance. You know, I put something on the internet this week, a picture of Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, and Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, neither of which know anything about health at all. They're just reading the script. They're just spectators, really. But it's quite a thought that these two people who, in terms of understanding what's going on, don't have two brain cells to rub together, they announce something that people have to do, this pair of brats, and tens of millions do it. Well, where do you think that's going to end with that scale of acquiescence? So what I'm saying is, I do understand why people acquiesce, because they've got to feed their families and all that. I understand that. I'm not condemning. But I have to say this. If we don't stop acquiescing with our own enslavement, like now, then it doesn't bear thinking where this is going. And the longer we leave it, the more extreme it's going to be, and the more there is going to be to turn around in a much more extreme situation of dealing with it. Because how this cult works, that's behind all this, is it pushes the gate, and if there's no resistance, it goes to the next one, and it pushes that, and if there's no resistance, it goes to the next one. This is exactly the process, Brian, that we've been seeing since all this started. Constantly pushing the gate. And people have said in Britain, understandably, why are they making masks mandatory now, all these months into this so-called crisis, when the death rate's been going down? There's reasons why it's going down, which I'm sure we'll come to. So why are they doing it? It's because if they threw everything at us at the start, and if they had not paid furlough payments to people for those that lost their, not lost their jobs, but lost their work because of the lockdowns and the business closures, and were they're still officially employed, but they don't work, so the government pays them some money. If they hadn't have done that, then this lockdown would have been over a long time ago, because there would have been such a reaction. First of all, how do I feed my family? And then all these other things out of nowhere, the masks and social distancing and all this stuff, in one go, there'd have been a massive pushback. And they know that, because the way they manipulate the world is psychologically. It's all about controlling people's perceptions. So this is what they've been doing. We'll introduce this, like the lockdown. We're just introducing the lockdown to flatten the curve. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Back in the midst of history. And that was, we'll placate them. This is not long, no, just flatten the curve. And then you get them used to it. And then you go to the next one. And you get them used to that. And then you go to the next one. And now the part of the script where they introduce masks and start to subjugate people literally, visually, destroying their individuality, and also symbolism. It's why I've written so much about symbolism over the years, and why the occult and the satanic groups and the secret societies use symbolism, the language of symbolism. It's their language, because it's the language of the subconscious. And if you can, this is what they're trying to get. They're trying to get into the subconscious, because they know that once they've planted thoughts, perceptions, beliefs in the subconscious, they will filter through to the conscious mind, at which point the person will think they're their conclusions, their insight, their decisions. But they won't be. They've been implanted. And
talk to me about the lack of self-esteem that someone has when they do something that they know isn't the right thing to do. You know, when I put a mask on when I know I shouldn't, and then it almost shows my subconscious that someone else is in charge.
Exactly that. So if you look at the mask from a conscious mind point of view, it's protecting you from a virus. Brackets, it ain't really, but they tell you it is. But what's it saying subconsciously? When you are symbolizing, and you see them on the internet, not least with all this censorship that's going on, what do people do? What images do people post when they're symbolizing being silenced, being censored, being subjugated, being cancelled, as it's called? They put something over the person's mouth. And now we've got something over the mouth of the great majority of the population. It's a symbol of subjugation, it's a symbol of being silenced, and it's a symbol of submission. Because we go back to the said bunch of prats that are actually in government, carrying out the agenda of the psychopaths in the shadows. And they announce that people are going to have to mandatorily wear masks. I mean, who are you people? It's against all the science and all the science that points out the health dangers of doing it. There's been no risk assessment by government of wearing masks regularly, none of that. When what are you doing? You're breathing in your own carbon dioxide, very dangerous, and you're not breathing in enough oxygen. But they do it anyway, which brings me round to the point that you've just made. It's a point that I've been making for weeks now. It's about, again, it's in the subconscious. It's about giving away your power and your sovereignty to some external force, the said bunch of prats and psychopaths. Because if you say to me, and you're a political leader or whatever, and you say to me, we're going to introduce this, and we're going to make you do this. If I say, hold on a minute, okay, let me look at what you want me to do. And I then research it, and I see if it makes sense and is any way justifiable in the circumstances before us. And I might say on occasion, actually, I can go with that because it makes sense to me. Now that's me holding on to my sovereignty and my personal freedom, because I'm making the free choice to say, yeah, okay, this makes sense to me, so I'll go with it. That's very different to what is happening. And the reason there are so many contradictions and so many holes in what we're being told to do is pure psychological manipulation. Quite simply, if I can make you acquiesce to something that's clearly ridiculous, clearly unsupportable, clearly a danger to health, and full of contradictions, and you're still going to submit and do it, then what is left of your uniqueness, your sovereignty, your self-respect? What's left? There is none. And talking of contradictions, I was outside a farm shop on the Isle of Wight the other day, and they've got the masks thing, so I don't go in, I get it delivered. But I went there to pay, save them coming to me. It was all done outside. And there's two ladies standing at the entrance waiting to go into the shop, because only two people are allowed in. And I looked at them, and they're wearing masks. I'm not kidding, Brian. They look like a pair of bandits about to raid the place, right? So they're standing there. And just here, because there's a cafe at this farm shop as well, is a table, and there's must be 12 or 13 people, clearly from different families, all around this table, right next to these people wearing masks like bandit masks, to go in and buy a loaf of bread. And you look there, it's mad. Look, what? And a member of staff came out, and I said, look, they're standing with a mask on, and they're sitting around a table having a great time. She said, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Yes, it is. So why are we acquiescing to it? Because when we do acquiesce to that level of crazy, we are submitting our uniqueness and our sovereignty and our self-respect almost completely. And I refuse to do it. I won't do it. I'll go to jail first before I'll do it. We'll see where we go from here.
Do you think more people should refuse to do it? Because otherwise, how will we ever make a change? It can't just be you.
Exactly. Well, let me give you a very good example of what I'm talking about. You see, if one person does something, they can pick them off and target them. They could do that to me. I look forward to it. But when very large numbers of people do it together, you see where the real power is. And it's not with these people in government and the psychopaths behind them. And I'll give you a wonderful example. A few weeks ago, on a very hot day, thousands of people, you remember it, thousands of people headed for the beaches. And there's so many people on the beaches, social distancing, forget it, mate, no chance. So everyone's sitting there having a good time. And what do these people tell you is the quickest way to kill a virus, even if you believe in it, and I certainly don't? It's sunlight. So the authorities should be saying, oh, they're out in the sun, that's great. Oh no, put a mask on, stay at home. Anyway, all these people are on the beach. And the authorities issued an emergency alert because of what was happening. These people in their thousands are on the beach and they're not social distancing. This is a major alert. All right, major alert, people. So what are you going to do about it? Well, there's nothing we can do, is there? There's thousands of people on the beach and they won't cooperate. Exactly. What if those thousands of people refuse to wear masks in shops? In shops in Britain, by the way, where the shop staff don't have to. And you can go into a bar without a mask. That's not a problem. But you can't go into a shop. What am I describing? All these contradictions. And if you go with the contradictions, even though it's ludicrous, you are giving away your power on a monumental scale, because you are simply doing what you are told, no matter what you are told. And if people would just refuse to do it, okay, you're traveling on a train. Okay, so people in the carriage refuse to wear masks. What are they going to do? What's the guard going to do? Are you going to call the police when the train arrives at the station? Well, you've seen how many people they're going to have to arrest. They won't bother with that. It's a matter of doing it in numbers, and to start that rolling, someone's got to start it. Because then we'll see where the power is, and it's not with the authorities. You see, what this government did, and this applies to the world. I'm talking about Britain now, but this applies to the world. What this government did with this mask, mandatory mask in shops, they said, the shops don't have to police this, although some of the big ones like Tesco's are doing that, which is why they'll never get a penny of my money again as long as I live. But it's the police that have to do it. Okay, so let's look at all the shops in Britain, in fact, all the shops on the Isle of Wight, come to that, and let's compare it with the number of police officers, right? It's unenforceable. But what are they doing? They are relying on the fact that people will do it anyway. And that's what's happened. And what I'm saying is, if you stopped doing it and refused to do it in numbers, then the next gate couldn't be pushed because they can't get through this one yet. And if we don't start doing this, and I know, people are frightened of authority, they're frightened of challenging authority and not obeying authority, because that's what we're programmed purposely to do. You come out of the womb and very soon you're sitting at a desk and an authority figure is telling you what you can do and can't do, when you can eat, when you can talk, when you can go to the toilet, and all these other things that happen once you enter the school system. So, and then there are punishments and rewards for obeying authority or not obeying authority all the way through your formative years, because they are preparing you for life to be acquiescent to authority and to fear challenging authority. I never learned that one. I must have missed that meeting. And so I know because of this that people are reticent. But all I can tell you is, if people go back to that first interview we did, and I said what this was all about, even before lockdown came in, and where it was going to go, how did I know that? How could I know that that's now played out? Because there is an agenda, which if you uncover it, allows you to predict the future, because unless the agenda is challenged and prevented from unfolding, it's going to happen. It's going to be the future. And I say from this point now, as we sit here, that where they're about to go will make what we've had so far seem like a afternoon tea. Because this script is meant to get more and more and more extreme. And they are going to go hysterical not too long from now, as you go into the fall and the winter, where every sniffle and every cough and every respiratory problem and every flu that they can get away with will be COVID-19, and they will use that to justify levels of lockdown, imprisonment, beyond even what we've seen at the peak of this one. So I know it's intimidating for people, but I tell you what, when you do it, you'll realize it's not as intimidating as you thought it was going to be. But what I'm saying is, if we don't summon the courage now to push back on this, or not even push back on it, just stop cooperating with it. There's no need to fight the government or fight the cult behind government. There's no need to go on protests and wave banners. No need for any of that. You just need to say, no, I'm not doing it. We're not doing it. And then you'll see where the real power is, because you'll realize that enforcing it without our acquiescence is impossible. And if we don't do it now, then when are we going to do it? Because we have mandatory masks now in shops, and even wider afield, in places like America. Mandatory masks on public transport. But the script includes mandatory masks for children all day at school. That's what the script involves when they get further through the gate pushing sequence. So are we going to draw the line then? And what they're doing, you see, Brian, is through all this process, this sequence, they're breaking down and breaking down and breaking down resistance. So further along the road, when the extreme of extreme stuff is in the script, then the plan is that they will have broken down human resistance to the point where they'll just accept it. Now is the time to say no. And that's all it takes, no. You know, I go into a shop, they say, you've got to sanitize your hands. Oh, all right, I can't come in if I do that, right? I can't buy anything. No, okay, see ya, have a nice one. Away. No. And you keep saying that and keep doing that, then not only are you not acquiescing with your own enslavement, but you're building up your own self-esteem, your own sense of sovereignty. I'll decide what happens in my life, not a bunch of psychopaths working through a bunch of prats, not having it. And everything will change. No, not doing it.
You mentioned what we can expect the rest of this year. So it's warm now, and we're coming into winter, and everyone's talking about the second wave, but it feels like the second wave is happening now, because if you open up a paper in America, you know, it's cases and cases and cases, and now more lockdowns, and now it's happening in Europe as well. But now winter's coming, and sniffles are coming. What can we expect?
You hit the right word, cases. On my website, davidicke.com, there's a 16-minute animated film that I've done with an animation company, which explains how this whole pandemic hoax was played. And we talked about it before. It's worth just briefly going through it again to get into the subject you've raised. At no point has the virus they're calling SARS-CoV-2, leading to the disease they're calling COVID-19, at no point has that virus been isolated and purified and shown to exist. And they've had a very, very long time now to prove it. After I've been challenging it, Dr. Andrew Kaufman and others have been challenging it and saying, show us the papers, show us the studies. Nowhere have they been shown. But some people have come out and said, oh, he has been isolated, this paper says so. I want to explain how they say that a virus they've never isolated and shown to exist is causing this disease called COVID-19. And this is a process that's been going on since the 1950s. They take genetic material from a diseased person or a diseased animal, and they put it in their dish that they work with. And they take the cells from that genetic material and they starve them of nutrients. This is all part of the process. They starve them of nutrients. How do you think that's going to work out? I mean, you know, I don't have a degree in medicine, but, you know, I do have a smear of intelligence. How do you think that's going to work out? So then they want to get rid of the bacteria, so they add antibiotics to the dish and other things, right? So what happens then is the cells start to decay. And they say those cells are decaying because of a virus. The virus we've never shown to exist, only assume. Now, if you are serious about establishing the cause of a disease or whatever, then what you do is you have a control study. It's very simple. You take healthy cells, not diseased, not in any way connected to this infectious agent you claim to exist, and you put them in the dish, and you take them through exactly the same sequence you've put through the disease cells, and you see if the healthy cells decay in the same way. And if they do, it's not your phantom virus that's causing the decay, it's your process and what you're doing. It's never done. They don't do that controlled process with healthy cells. So this virus has never been shown to exist. And it was first in China diagnosed by symptoms, because they came out with a series of symptoms, which they're adding to all the time, noticed, almost by the day it seems now. And I'll come to why that is in a second. And they were basically flu-like symptoms. Flu-like symptoms in Wuhan, one of the most toxic atmospheres in terms of air quality in the world, where there's enormous amounts of respiratory disease and flu-like symptoms. So they do it by symptoms, which is so easy. You just redesignate what was making people ill in Wuhan year after year after year, and now you call it COVID-19. And then you introduce a test, the RT-PCR test, which the creator, Kary Mullis, who won the Nobel Prize for creating the test in the 1980s, he said this test must not be used to diagnose infectious disease, because it can't. That's the test they're using to decide who has COVID-19 and who doesn't. And what that test is testing for is a genetic material which, if you amplify the genetic material enough, so many elements of it are brought to a point where the test can pick them up, that there is a point where if you amplify the genetic material and thus the sensitivity of the test enough, every single person who has the test will test positive. At lower amplification, some will test positive, some will test negative. So we have a test not testing for SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, because it's never been isolated. How can you create a test anyway for something you've never isolated? What's it looking for? How can you create a vaccine for something you have not isolated, and thus, what are you vaccinating for? It's all a scam. So they get the tests to produce the cases. And the more you test, the more cases you're going to get in terms of positives, not for the virus, but for the genetic material, which ultimately everybody has in their body, if you amplify it enough. And what did Tedros, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros owned lock, stock, and barrel by Bill Gates, as is the World Health Organization, what did he say was the way to deal with this crisis? Test, test, test. What is Hancock and Fauci and all these people that are advising governments and are in government, what are they saying? Test, test, test. Because they know that the more you test, the more you're going to get positives, not for the virus, but for the genetic material, but you're going to say it's for the virus, and so your cases go up. Oh, look, we've had this massive explosion of cases. We've got to go lockdown again. Oh, we need masks, all this stuff. Now, I was born in an English city called Leicester, where my brother still lives, actually the same house. And it's been locked down for a second time, Leicester, because the number of cases went up. Well, in the period of the cases being as they were before and the cases going up, so they say we must lock down because of the explosion of cases, there was a massive increase in Leicester of testing centers. And the more you test, the more you're going to get positive for the genetic material, not for the virus. And this is what's happening around the world. The more you test, the more cases you're going to get. Now, what's the question, Brian, when you test somebody and they test positive. How are you? Any symptoms? Any problems? No symptoms. Oh, you've tested positive for COVID-19. Oh, really? Oh, no, got no symptoms. No. And this is what's happening. It's not people dying. It's people getting positive tests. So why, when you think about it, why do you have to test to see if someone has a, quote, deadly disease? I would have thought it would be obvious without testing that someone has a deadly disease. Instead, we have 85% plus of people who test positive with a test not testing for COVID-19 who have no symptoms, or they're asymptomatic. Do you know why they've got no symptoms? There's nothing wrong with them, because they haven't got an infectious disease. And so that's where the tests are coming from, the cases are coming from. And as the British Lung Foundation points out, respiratory disease in the summer goes down by 80%. And that where the deaths have been coming from has been redesignation of diagnosis from what people have always got respiratory disease for, and many other things. They've been putting COVID-19 on the death certificates of people who died in motorcycle crashes and with heart attacks and cancer. This is the scam which leads to the death figures alongside the cases, is when you go into any medical situation, no matter what is wrong with you, even when you're dead, they test you. If you test positive in a test not testing for the virus, COVID-19 goes on your death certificate. On my website, about 2-3 weeks ago, there was a recording of a member of the public talking to a coroner's office. And what the member of the public wanted to know was when the coroner's office was going to give him a diagnosis of death, a cause of death, for a loved one. And you can go to the website and hear the conversation. And the lady in the coroner's office said, well, what happened is we took a test for COVID-19. This is after the loved one had died, right? They said, and we sent it off, but the results not come back. So the guy said, so what does that mean? Well, if it comes back positive, COVID-19 goes on the death certificate. And if it comes back negative, we'll have a post-mortem, see what caused the death, right? So they're suspending post-mortems. As long as you test positive for a test not testing for the virus is the cause of death. And we've talked before, in America, there's financial incentives, $4,600 are paid to hospitals if they diagnose regular pneumonia, $13,000 if they diagnose COVID-19 pneumonia from the same symptoms, and $39,000 if they put a COVID diagnosed patient on a ventilator. So if you've got a real virus, you don't have to give incentives, financial incentives to hospitals to diagnose it, because you've got a real virus, so you diagnose it. And you don't have to pressure, and doctors around the world have said this again and again and again, you don't have to pressure doctors, indeed order doctors, to put COVID-19 on death certificates if you've got a real virus. There's no need to do that. You do that if you haven't got a real virus, and it's all a scam. There was a British doctor who did an article. I quote him in the answer, who said that he knew that other doctors were putting COVID-19 on the death certificates for all causes of death from early March onwards. And that's where your deaths are coming from. And as you move into the summer and you have less potential for re-diagnosis, the death figures fall. But they've got to keep it bubbling because they want to come round into the fall, winter and start terrifying people with even an increase in deaths, apparent deaths from COVID-19. And the way they're keeping it bubbling is by going to cases, and cases are coming from the fake test. And one other point, people would say, well, why don't they just release some infectious agent? Just release it. Why do they have to have a virus that doesn't exist but just kid us that it does? Very simple. If you release a real infectious agent, you lose control of it. You lose control of where it goes. You lose control of who gets it. And many people will get it. You don't want to get it because they're part of your, at some level, they're part of your hierarchy of agenda imposition. But there's something else. If you have a real infectious agent, you are limited to the effects of that agent. If you invent a virus that doesn't exist, you completely control what it does or is perceived to do and what the symptoms of it are. So
it's genius.
On that level, it's genius, exactly. So what you have with a real infectious agent, if you like, is you have a series of symptoms that come from that. But if you've got a made-up virus, you can give it any symptoms you like. I mean, look what's happening, Brian. I mean, they're taking the piss. The symptoms increase all the time. I've read this week that the Johns Hopkins University researchers in America, who are absolutely hand in glove in bed with Bill Gates on many levels, not least financially, are saying that now, this virus, it can hide. This is the word they use. It can hide in your ears and just behind. Oh, we'll better have earmuffs on then. Oh, yes. Well, Mickey Mouse earmuffs. What about that? Oh, that's all right. They're probably better. And then this week, another group of researchers, I mean, there must have been white coats either side of them when they made the announcement. It had to be. Are saying that people, men and women too, but men for obvious reasons, who are over 6 foot, have more chance of being infected with a virus. It's mad, but they have a virus that doesn't exist. They can make it whatever they want. They can make what symptoms they want. They can make its means of being communicated any way they want. And that's the real reason for the lunacy of, if you're above 6 feet, then you've got a better chance of getting the virus. You know why? Because they say, well, why is that? Why is there more people 6 foot? They say, ooh. That's evidence, you see, that the virus is communicated through airborne particles, right? Not just stuff that comes out, but actually it's in the air. Well, if you look at viruses and the fact that viruses need a living host to actually survive, that's ludicrous. But where's that going? If it's an airborne virus, everyone needs to wear masks all the time, wherever they are, because the virus is in the air. And you can see how when you create a virus, you invent one, you can make it go wherever you like. And that's what they're doing. And I watch every day and shake my head. People can see the lunacy of these announcements as lunacy. Or they can take a step back and see how what the game is. And it becomes what you've just said. It becomes genius because of how they're manipulating people psychologically to accept even more impositions, because there is no limit to what this virus can do, because it doesn't exist. And the only limit to its what it can do is your own imagination. And so you can have a virus, and again, I would make this point before I go any further, that there is no conclusive scientific evidence that any virus causes any illness. That's staggering but true. But you can have a virus that actually has a political view. So if you go out on a protest against lockdown and against fascistic imposition, the virus will have you. The virus will have you. You're killing people with that protest. But you go out in thousands to protest for, on behalf of a cult-owned, created, funded organization called Black Lives Matter. And the virus, because it's woke, you see, the virus, will leave you alone. Well, that's all right. No, that's not a problem, that is. These people protesting against the lockdowns, ooh, killing people. You protesting when we want you to protest? Don't worry, no problem, no danger. And this is what happens when you invent a virus. You can make it do whatever you want.
And so anything that divides us, they're going to promote no matter what. Whether it's the virus or protests, they're going to let that happen. And that's what you're seeing with the Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. It's divide and rule by on racial grounds. And what we need to do is to put down the fault lines. They're ludicrous fault lines, for goodness sake. It's only a brief experience. What you are is consciousness. You are a point of attention, a unique point of attention. Celebrate that uniqueness for a start. You are a unique point of attention within an infinite flow of infinite consciousness, having a brief, stunningly transitory experience as a human. And what is a human? It is a particular way of processing and decoding information. That's all human is. The human form processes and decodes information in a certain way that we call human. So when near-death experiences leave the body and leave that processing, decoding system that I call the biological computer, their reality dramatically changes. And of course, millions of near-death experiences have described how reality transforms. And many say suddenly past, present, and future are all happening in the same now and all that. Because you've left the processing system, the computer system, if you like, which processes information in a certain way that we call human. But you are not the human, that is your experience. You are the consciousness, eternal, infinite consciousness that is having that experience. And when we come from that level of self-identity, we see ourselves in an expanded form, in an infinite form. But when we self-identify only with being human, human is the I, then I self-identify with limitation, we self-identify with I can't, we self-identify with little me. And what the cult has been doing is, because they've had fault lines through what we call history, fault lines of culture, fault lines of religion, fault lines of race, which they've been able to play off against each other. But they've really upped the ante now, because in what we call identity politics, which is a creation of the cult, the whole woke mentality is a creation of the cult through the schools and universities for several generations, they're now subdividing the human from not just men and women, but into a long list of letters, which seems to get longer by the week, where people are self-identifying with the minutiae of their themselves. I am are. And instead of just being a man or a woman or black or white or whatever, suddenly they have to self-identify right down to fine detail. And what this has done has created more and more self-identities to allow more and more divide and rule. Now we have, feminists at war with transgender activists and stuff like that. And if you are wishing to subjugate a massive number of people, and you are a few, and at the core this cult is tiny, then you have to divide and rule the target population. You have to get the target population, here we go, current events, to police itself. People laugh at sheep following the shepherd and then running away from the sheepdog, symbolic of fear. But humanity's become so manipulated that it's dispensed with the sheepdog. It's got a kind of shepherd, which is the authorities saying, you're going to do this, you're going to wear masks. But it's the sheep that police the sheep, not the sheepdog. It's not the authorities shouting at people in the supermarket aisle because they've not got a mask on. It's other members of the population that's being targeted. So dividing and ruling is absolutely vital. And what divides people more than a mask? You lose, like I say, you lose your individuality. But also look at what this fake pandemic has allowed them to do. At a time when they're introducing more and more fascistic impositions, they are massively limiting the number of people that can gather. So it becomes very much more challenging to get a momentum going to oppose what's going on, which is why we have to bring it back. Well, I say, which is why people can just go and do it. I mean, if Black Lives Matter protests can do it just because it suits the cult, then other people can do it for other reasons. It's just a choice. Just like the people on the beaches. But if it doesn't go that way, then it comes down to the individual. A series of individual choices, which becomes the massive collective choices, to say no to the deletion of their freedoms and the imposition of fascism upon them. And either way, the few can't control the many unless the many cooperate. And this is what we're seeing, and it has to stop. Otherwise, this is going to make Orwell shake his head and say, I understated it, the way they want to go with this.
In America, we're seeing, cases spiking everywhere. And it's also an election year. And the whole country seems to be divided. And some saying that the cases are spiking, so Trump won't get elected and Biden will be elected. But there's a lot of division there. You've spoken before about the significance of a president, but what do you see when you see the election and Biden and Trump and then cases spiking and people yelling at each other and the left being attacked by the right in America? What do you see there?
Well, what I said when Trump was coming towards being elected in 2016 is that they were bringing him to power to be a symbol of hatred by I won't say the left, because I grew up in the original left. I was born and brought up in a council house, which you rented off the council for people around the world, in Leicester. And my father came from a Labour Party left background, and that's where we were coming from when I was growing up. But that left, as you can still see today, if you go on the internet, look at the pictures of the students at Berkeley University going on mass protest during the Vietnam era, demanding freedom of speech not be deleted. That genuine left opposed corporations. It opposed multi-millionaire imposition, what we now call billionaires. And it opposed the deletion of civil liberties and freedom of speech. But what's happened is the billionaires and the corporations of the cult have hijacked the left long ago now. And it's become this fake left called woke. And what you have is this apparently bizarre, but it's quite explainable, close association now between the so-called social justice warriors of the woke fake left and billionaires and billionaire corporations. You know, a lot of this censorship, which is cheered on by the woke mentality when the original left would have been on the streets opposing it, is all coming through the billionaires and the corporations. And then you look at people like George Soros and other cult associated billionaires, and they're funding the woke left. And the difference that's made this transformation from opposing power and imposition of power to getting in bed with it is identity politics. Because the woke left may go on and on and on about social justice, but don't do anything about it. It's all identity politics. And so now it's not an opposition to the imposition of power by corporations and billionaires. It's whether someone supports the agenda of woke, which is the agenda of the cult, and speaks the language of woke. So now, as long as these billionaires are funding these woke organizations, like Black Lives Matter, for instance, massively, and as long as they're speaking the language of woke, which they do all the time, your frauds like Zuckerberg and at Facebook and Brin and Page at Google and Susan Wojcicki at YouTube, all of them facilitators of fascism. As long as they speak the language of woke and censor the people that the woke mentality wants censored, they're now on our side. They're now the good guys. So now you have this alliance between billionaires and billionaire corporations and the so-called social justice warrior left, which is supposed to be seeking social justice for people who are being destroyed, subjugated, and made poor and destitute by the very corporations and billionaires that they're now in bed with. It's bizarre. But what it's created is this real clear fault line, which is all focused on Trump, between the so-called woke left and those who support Trump. So in America now, we've gone from having a mature political conversation to the question, do you support Trump or do you hate Trump? That's the divide. And it's been done on purpose. You see, when you read instruction manuals for Marxism and how it explains how you transform a society from freedom, democracy into Marxism, one of the things that they say is don't target faceless bureaucrats and faceless corporations. They might be responsible, but don't target them. What you have to do is pick an individual. This is in their manuals. You pick an individual and you focus everything that's wrong on him. And that's what they've done with Trump. Because what you've got is you've got the woke left and you've got the Trump administration. And these two hands become one hand. There's cults controlling both. And if you look at Trump, he's spoken the language of his supporters, what his supporters want to hear. He did that to get elected, did it very well. But what's he done? What's he done compared with what he said he would do? And I've been saying for a while now, maybe Trump will just survive this because people are so sick of the woke left and all the violence and stuff, and enough people will be sick of it. But at some point, either in November or the election after that, I think they would prefer November. They want to bring a woke government in. And what they've got is Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden clearly is is not with us most of the time. I mean, he's obviously got serious psychological problems and can hardly string a sentence together and often doesn't seem to know where he is. And what this virus has done, this fake virus, it's allowed them to keep him out of the public domain. So there's no debate and there's no conference speech and all this stuff. And basically, they're trying to get the Democrats in on a simple line. Biden is not Trump. Okay, so if Biden got in miraculously, they'd have to keep him absolutely out of public arena to do that. He is a literal vehicle, an empty shell for those in the shadows to impose what they want. And the woke agenda, fierce censorship through political correctness, the Green New Deal, which is nothing more than Marxism, and all these other facets that I've talked about of the Hunger Games society, that woke agenda is what the cult wants, because the cult created woke and created the woke agenda. But we'll see in November where that goes. But at some point, they want a woke government in. And the Labour Party in Britain has gone the same way. That's been taken over by woke as well. It's a time when we need to realize, I would suggest, that politics ain't going to change anything. See, when you've got two parties in country after country after country after country after country that are controlled by the same force, whoever you vote for, the cult's going to be in power. This is how it works. You know, what we call political choice is voting for party A. You don't like what they do, so next election you vote for party B. You don't like what they do because it's pretty much the same as what they've done. And if you want to get rid of party B, what do you have to do? Oh, you got to go back to party A. And this is what's happening all the time. And it's an illusion of freedom, and it's an illusion of democracy. What they want eventually, and this is where they're moving with this virus hoax, is towards the end of even paying lip service to an elected government. They want to go beyond elected governments. It's what they call the post-democratic society, whereby the world will be run not by elected people, but by technocrats, by bureaucrats, by medical technocrats like Fauci, and these characters in Britain like Vallance and Whitty, and Silicon Valley technocrats, and scientists and engineers. Now, takes a breath. Who's driving the show now? What are the politicians saying all over the world? We're being guided by the science. What that means, because they're not, if you take science literally, take the masks, the science of masks is don't wear them. But it's the technocrats that are making all the decisions. Technocrats, including psychologists who are driving the mask social distancing for reasons of behavior modification and subjugation. It's not the politicians. Politicians just read the script. So when people say we're listening to the science, we're being guided by the science, well, okay. So who are the scientists that are guiding you? And around the world, invariably, again and again, they all have big financial connections to Bill Gates. And Bill Gates is orchestrating this whole virus vaccine scam on behalf of the cult. When the World Health Organization Director General Tedros is speaking, Gates is speaking. What's coming out of Tedros's mouth is Gates. And when Gates speaks, it's the cult speaking. I mean, I saw a video recently where someone's asking a very reasonable question. I've asked it myself. How does a guy who has made hundreds of millions from selling software, how does he take control of the global health system? That's what's happened. What is Gates? He's a technocrat. He's never seen a ballot box in his life. And so the world that you're seeing And the forces that you are seeing driving policy now and into the winter more extreme is the very technocratic society that they've been aiming towards all along. And they want the end of political government.
You mentioned censorship. And we've typically in history seen that coming from the right. We saw the McCarthy era, back in the 40s and 50s. But now we're seeing that happen from the left more than anything. And sometimes the Silicon Valley tech billionaires allied with the left. And I'm wondering what you think of that. I mean, we're the victims of digital censorship on April 6th with the second episode we did. And this week, there were a bunch of doctors that went on the steps of the Supreme Court and came out proponents of hydroxychloroquine as a potential therapeutic for COVID. And immediately that message was publicly shut down on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. It's been scrubbed from YouTube. Even Zuckerberg was asked about it on Congress. But for the first time, I think people could actually see this censorship happening in real time. What do you see there happening?
Well, what they've done is they've flipped the right and the left. So whereas big business would be the domain of the right, big business has just hijacked the left. I'm thinking of a quote by a journalist on the New Yorker who said words to the effect of, if the 1% was basically going to get control, it had to rebrand itself as the supporters of the other 99%. And you do that via the left, not the right, from the perception of the population. And so now you've got the left standing for everything the old left didn't. And you've got the right pushing for protecting civil liberties and freedom of speech. And if you are going to move into a world, which is what they plan, of the end of countries, the end of nations, and a one world central blob monoculture, which is where they want to go through AI and the transformation of the human body and many other things, then your conservatives with a small c, they are much likely or more likely to want to conserve, to want to protect the status quo, protect the society, protect the sense of nationhood. They're more likely to do that. And we're seeing that's what they're standing for. It's where Trump's supports come from. Whereas the left is much more open to collectivism, to Marxism. And the technocracy they want is just a technological form of Marxism, centralized dictatorship, fascism, Marxism, the same thing really, in the way that the population is subjugated. So they flipped because they want to move into this Marxist, communistic, fascistic global society. And what they've been doing, because there are no borders to the cult, they're just for public consumption. They have been using China, which is one of their great centers, been developing that for a long, long time. And because China has had a tyrannical, anything we say goes regime since the Mao Revolution, which the cult was behind, they've been able to incubate a model of control which they want to play out across the whole world. And because what the Chinese regime says happens, they've been able to move that society very fast. So now you've got this literally technocratic, that's what they're calling it, technocratic tyranny in China, where they can find people in minutes through millions and millions of face recognition cameras in the cities, etc. Whereas in the West, although it's run by the same cult, it has to run it in a slightly different way because the West has a perception of being the home of freedom and democracy. So you can't impose things just like that. Well, until now, they're doing it in the West now through the pandemic hoax. But you couldn't move as fast as China. And what this pandemic has done is allowed them to move the West, or taking it from the other direction, to move the Chinese model into the West. And the Chinese model is basically, it's fascistic, but it's communistic in its structure. So that's what they want the world to be. This global society is to be based on the Chinese model. And so where they want to go from here is to continue that momentum. This is where this script's coming from that I talked about. And every step in the script is moving the Chinese model more and more into the West, more and more surveillance, more and more centralized imposition, more and more complete control of economics and employment from the center. When you look at it, China gets a very much a free ride in the media, not least in the American media, where it's almost become like Israel. You don't criticize it. And it's a very true statement that if you want to know who controls you, then look at who you can't criticize. So we're looking at a global version of China that's unfolding, and they've been incubating it for a very long time. Now, in terms of, and of course, if you want censorship, go to China. And censorship is the fundamental foundation of all tyrannies, because the stadium in which human control is played out is human perception. From perception comes human behavior. You control perception, you control behavior. And you control perception by controlling the information that people receive, through which they form their perceptions, which become their behavior. So if you're going to do that and have complete control of perception, then you can't just control what you're putting out. You have to stop people receiving information that gives them another way of looking at the world and what's happening. And that's where all the censorship is coming from. I've been saying this and writing this for decades. They're picking off more and more of opinion, view, information, facts, evidence that puts a different view of the world to the one coming out with the official narrative, to the point now where it's got laughable. And you mentioned the doctors. What those doctors were saying in the last week is, compared with people like me, for instance, is very mild in challenging the official version of the pandemic. But immediately, boom, gotta go. And I would say this about censorship. You can look at it as this cult expressing its power. We're so powerful. We'll censor this. We'll delete that. But I see it in another way. When I look at this censorship, I see desperation. I really do. I see absolute desperation. Because the official narrative, not least of this virus pandemic, is so ludicrous, so full of holes, so like the masks, so unsupportable by the evidence, that the only way they are going to protect it and hold it together is by censoring any exposure of it whatsoever. And that includes these doctors, which were not going to the levels of exposure that I'm going to, but even to the level they went to, they have to go as well. Everything that challenges the agenda and the pandemic narrative is being targeted for censorship, because the narrative is so ridiculous that only by mass censorship can it survive. And so I don't see this as a power, a power of the cult expression of censorship. I see it as a desperation of the cult, because they know how little it would take if it went into mass circulation to take their narratives apart. I've done it in The Answer. And we shouldn't get pulled into the idea that we are dealing with an all-powerful force. That's what they want us to believe. We're not. We're dealing with the equivalent of frightened little boys and girls in short trousers who know that they can only survive and they can only continue to advance their agenda, indeed survive any agenda, if they keep the population in ignorance that there is an agenda and that there is a force behind the direction of human society, and B, they keep the target population in a sense of powerlessness and in a sense of little me, what can I do? And they have to hold those two things, because if they don't, the game's over. Like I say, the game's over if enough people just say, no, we're not doing it. No, we're not doing it. It's over. That's how tenuous this cult is in its holding on to power. And it knows it. It knows that its power and its agenda can fall in a ridiculously short time if the perceptions of humanity change, and if there's any free flow of information to expose and unravel its ludicrous narratives that we're supposed to believe. So it's not censoring because it's a bit of fun. It's censoring because it's got no choice. And you know, people say, Brian, well, it seems as if they don't really care anymore about, you know, that we know. Well, they do. They'd rather we didn't know. They'd rather we didn't see the blatant censorship that's going on, that's almost laughable in its extreme. They'd rather we didn't see that. But they haven't got a choice. They have to go to those extremes because their official narrative is so ludicrous, a child could take it apart. And so it's had to come on public display. And this is a very dangerous time for this cult. Although it seems to hold the aces, likes to think it does, it's a very dangerous time because there is the mentality which can be incredibly powerful and world-changing of nothing left to lose. When you think you've got something to lose, you can acquiesce in the hope that you won't lose it. There was a quote from Winston Churchill who talked in terms of basically placating the crocodile in the hope that it would eat you last, or feeding the crocodile in the hope that it would eat you last. And while you feel you've got something to lose, you will acquiesce or are likely to acquiesce in the hope of protecting it. But we're moving, Brian, into a situation very, very fast where vast numbers of the human population will have nothing left to lose. We're on the cusp of a frenzy of home evictions and foreclosures coming up, and people thrown out of their homes. And we are coming to the end of the furlough payments. What the hell are people going to use to put food on the table then? And they're planning food shortages anyway. And when the furlough payments come to an end, those people that have been on furlough, theoretically still employed but being paid by the government, they're going to realize there's no job to go back to. And we're entering this point where vast numbers of people are going to reach that point of nothing left to lose. Now, that is a very dangerous point for the cult, because once you've got nothing left to lose, well, a lot of options are on the table suddenly that weren't before, like actually standing up and saying we're not having it. I've used the analogy before of you've got an army coming at you and you've got a way of escape. So what are most people going to do? They're going to run. Symbolic of acquiescing to the system in the hope that you will hold on to what you think you could lose. But if the army's coming and you're in a canyon and there's only one way out and the army's coming through the one way out, you've got nothing left to lose. So where you would run, you will turn around and say, well, I'm going to give it my best shot because I've got nothing left to lose. And we're entering that point where enormous numbers of people are going to be in that position. And what we need is the coordination of that mentality to bring the house down. Not through violence, not through fighting, not even through protest, but through non-cooperation with our own enslavement. When I talked about, when are we going to draw the line? When is enough enough? When have we lost so much self-respect that we're going to demand it back? Because if people had responded back in March, April, at the start of this, and said, look, this makes no sense, we're not having it. Because the whole lockdowns, of course, were based on made-up figures in computer models. Then those people would not now be facing economic Armageddon. Because we wouldn't have had it. But people acquiesced to it. And so now we have economic Armageddon. And this is what I mean. What is life? Life is simple. It's choice and consequence. Choice and consequence. You make choices, you take the consequences. Nice, not so nice. From those consequences, you make new choices, and you face consequences, new choices, consequences. And you hopefully learn from this process of choice and consequence to make better choices of more benefit to you. But what we've been doing since this pandemic hoax was played is we've been making choices and having consequences. Choices and consequences. It's what life is. And we've been making choices, or vast numbers of people have, that say, I will acquiesce to it, I will accept it. And that's led to consequences. And those consequences get more and more severe the more we make the choice to acquiesce and not say no. We're not acquiescing to our own enslavement. And those choices need to change urgently. And like I say, I said many years ago, this has got to get really, really bad before we can turn it around. Because only when people in enormous numbers are looking this in the face and can't deny it anymore, only then have we got a chance of turning this around. Because before that point is reached, there'll always be a story and an excuse not to look this in the eye, but to acquiesce and prevaricate. And it allows them to go more and more along the road of extremes. But there comes a point where you can't deny it anymore. And surely we're there now. And if we're not there now, we're going to be very shortly. We can't deny that there is a force at work I could call it evil, but evil would probably sue for defamation of character. I mean, we are talking super evil and super psychopaths. And there's not many of them compared with us, which is why they have to divide and rule us and get us at war with each other, so that they can go along their path unchallenged. But what has happened in this period is very large, very significant numbers of people have looked at what is happening, and the penny has dropped. It's pulled a lot of people more into the coma because of fear. But it's also woke a lot of people up to look at the world and say, actually, there is something going on, isn't there? And what we need now is for those people to cross the street, to move from a point of view where they're starting to see it. And at davidicke.com, we get emails from the public all the time. I mean, they're just enormous in number now. And you read as many as you can, and you can see how people who only in the last few weeks during this hoax have kind of opened their mind to the world from another angle, and they write to you about a situation or whatever, and you can see they got it. They got it in weeks. And they can see why something's happening where they couldn't see it before. Because it comes out of the subconscious into the conscious mind, and you can see it. Like I say, this cult works through the subconscious mind. It's working in the subconscious. That's why it works in the hidden. The subconscious is hidden from the conscious mind. They're all expressions of the same thing. And when you put information out, like I've been doing for 30 years, etc., is what you're doing for people that actually take the trouble to read it, is you're pulling out of the subconscious into the conscious mind what the hell is going on. And so people suddenly see it. But the next stage is crossing the street and not just seeing it, but ceasing to cooperate with it, ceasing to engage with it. Because that will be the end of it. You know, we're holding this human control system together. Therefore, we have the power to unravel it. And it can happen so fast once people learn to say no, instead of finding an excuse to acquiesce because they'd rather not face the consequences of saying no. And if enough people say no, there are no consequences. What consequences were there for all those people on the beaches when they announced, declared a major incident? There was no consequences, too many people not cooperating. This is what can happen if people would only do it. And the longer we leave it, the more extreme it's going to become. Very fast, it's going to become more extreme than we even are now.
Is there a plan when people start to run out of money? You know, in the next few months, is it a universal basic income? Do you only get the money if you comply, if you get your vaccines, which I want to talk about? There must be a plan, because you can't have a bunch of people destitute or they will revolt.
Yeah, well, that's all in the answer. I've been talking about this for a long time, the plan for a universal basic income. I've always had a philosophy, since way back when I was brought up in Leicester, that there should be a level to which no human being should fall. Because I think we're a human family. I think we should look after each other. I don't believe in equality of outcome, because that's a race to the bottom. I mean, look at the Soviet Union and other places where they're, in theory, attempted that, but there's always an elite, whatever the system is. But I do believe in equality of opportunity, and I do believe that there is a level that people should not be allowed to fall into if we are going to claim to be what is called human. But that's not what the basic income's about. That's how it will be sold, but that's not what it's about. The idea, and you know, we're going back now to the very first interview that we did on this subject, even before the lockdowns kicked in, where I talked about the Hunger Games Society. And that is where the cult inner core, what is called the 1% by some, is at the top of the pyramid. The rest of humanity is at the bottom in destitution and dependency on the cult. And in between is a police military state to hold that status quo together. And if you are going to create a situation of mass global dependency of the population, thus control on the few, you have to destroy the independent livelihoods and employment of the population. And as I said in that first interview, right at the start of the first interview, before the lockdowns, that is what this is about. And so what they've done, I mean, you know, one of the points I made then was the legacy of this is not going to be health, it's going to be economic. And we're just about to see the scale of that. So what they've done is destroy independent businesses and the independent employment with those businesses of vast numbers of people. Nothing even like what's coming. Because what they've done to business, and look who's taken the brunt of it. Not the major corporations, not the Amazons who have benefited enormously from it, but small businesses, medium businesses. And they, with the lockdown, basically smacked them around the head with a baseball bat by shutting them down. And now they're opening or giving the opportunity to open some of them, those that haven't gone out of business in the meantime. And what they're actually doing symbolically is, having hit them around the head with a baseball bat, they're now letting them bleed to death. Because the regulations, the impositions on business means they simply can't get the throughput because of all the social distancing and regulations. They can't get the throughput to make a profit and survive. And so they're going to be falling and falling and falling. And with every one that falls, more people are falling into the lower strata of the Hunger Games society. And so this is why the 1% people, your Zuckerbergs and their like, who couldn't give a damn about the poor and destitute. These people are psychopaths. Psychopath in a t-shirt. They're talking about a universal guaranteed income. But they're not doing it out of altruism. They're doing it because part of the control system. Because it will come with strings. You can get your meager guaranteed income only if you do what you're told. And part of this, or an expression of this system, is the vaccine. Because their number one, their plan A, is to have mandatory vaccinations for every man, woman, and child on the planet. The psychopath Gates has openly said that. And if enough people push back or won't have it, then there's plan B, which is you cannot come out of severe draconian restrictions on your life unless you have the vaccine. And, you know, in the first part of the answer, 85% of that book was written before the lockdowns. And what happened after the lockdowns is everything I said in the first 85% of the book they wanted, they basically grabbed because of the virus pandemic. And I talk in there about the Gates organization called Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and how they were creating a digital tattoo, which they said was to be given to third world or developing world children to show if they've been vaccinated or not. And then we come into the virus pandemic hoax, and now we see why that digital tattoo was really being developed, was for the population in general. So the idea is that you get this tattoo if you're vaccinated, and as you go around various places, there's going to be technology that picks up that tattoo. And if it doesn't, if you like ping and say, yes, he's been vaccinated, you can't go in, or you can't go where you want to go. This is, and then they say, well, if you want to go to all these places and you want to go back to some kind of normal life, you've got to have the vaccine. And this is what is planned. And if you think of a James Bond villain on an island somewhere who wants to take over the world, what an orgasmic dream it would be if they could get access to the body of every man, woman, and child on the planet and put into that body what they wanted and what would benefit their agenda to take control of everybody. Just think about that. nearly 8 billion people, and they want to vaccinate every one of them for an alleged virus, which according to latest mainstream estimates, if you are under 70, you have a chance of going from infection to fatality of 0.004%. Even if you add the over 70s, it becomes 0.26%. And every single person, and these cases are increasing with the fake test, every person who tests positive in their eyes for COVID-19 and has no symptoms, the fatality, the infection to fatality rate goes down and down and down and down and down and down and down. So it's probably even less than 0.004% by now as they test more people. And for that, we have had the independent livelihoods of the global population destroyed in so many cases, businesses that people built up over decades and decades. My brother in Leicester spent 45 frickin' years building his bus repair business, right? Devastated because the buses have been off the road because of lockdown. And this is just one story of all over the world. And that has been done, even if you believe the virus exists, it doesn't, for figures like that in terms of the effect on the population. We have children being told to wear masks in schools, that they should wear masks in schools, breathing in their own carbon dioxide, losing their individuality, when the chances of a young person dying from this COVID-19 is basically zero. We've had mass surveillance being justified in track and trace for a virus, even if you believe it exists, with those ludicrously small figures of impact. And we have an extreme, almost indescribably extreme psychopath called Bill Gates, saying on the basis of that impact, every man, woman, and child on the planet must be vaccinated. Now, that is so ridiculous, so unjustifiable. It's obviously a scam, and if it's a scam, there's a reason for it. So then comes the question, what's in the frickin' vaccine? And as you know, from the start of our interviews on this subject, I've said the vaccine already exists, or the contents of the vaccine already exists, even before they played the pandemic hoax. And what they've been doing is trying to just put as much time as they can between when they said they started trying to develop a vaccine back in January, February, to the point where it comes out. Because as people will know, it takes years and years to develop a vaccine, even ones that do damage to people. So the idea that they can produce a vaccine for a coronavirus, which they've never done before, in the period they're talking about is ridiculous. And I know that even some pro-vaccination people are like, what? How have they done this? Well, it's not that they're looking for a vaccine. The contents already exists. They're just trying to find the smallest amount of time they can, but some credibility before they introduce what they had from the start and call it, oh, we've discovered a new vaccine. And I'll tell you two things that are going to be in it. One is nanotechnology, nanobots, self-replicating technology, which is going to be designed to change the nature of the human body cumulatively. And by the way, Gates is already saying it won't be one vaccine, it will be at least two. And for old people, it could be three or more, because they're just killing old people. I mean, the lockdown was to protect old people. Well, how many have died, not least as a result of the lockdown? They're trying to kill old people, not protect them. And even the vaccine itself will be a DNA changing vaccine. And one that is a new DNA manipulative vaccination technique, because they want to change the nature of the human body. Another thing that will be in the vaccine, I strongly suggest, will be a sterilization agent. One of the things that I've been tracking in the books over decades is the catastrophic collapse in sperm counts, not least in Western men, and the fertility rates. I mean, when I grew up in the 50s, you never heard the term fertility clinic. Didn't exist, certainly not in the public arena, you never heard it. Now it's an explosive industry all over the world. Fertility rates are plummeting. There was an article, I quoted in the book, about sperm counts, and it was actually on CNN. And there was a quote in there which said, if sperm was an animal, they would now be talking of it in terms of extinction. And many and various things, the stuff in food, the stuff in drink and water, etc. The smartphones in the trouser pockets of men all over the world, devastating for sperm. And also, I say vaccines have an input here. And if you want to have a sterilization agent into every human being, so that the biological human form that we know over a period of time, it won't be like overnight, ceases to be able to procreate because you want to replace it with something else, then what do you want? You want to be able to put into the body of every man, woman, and child on the planet what will achieve that end. And Robert Kennedy Jr. has pointed out how females have been, in Africa and places, have been sterilized by vaccination programs. So, that vaccination can sterilize people is a fact, depending what's in it. And so, once it's done, that's it. There's no taking it out. And like I say, this is what they're going to say. Just like the flu, they're going to say, well, yes, we've got a vaccine. Yes. So everyone's vaccinated. Yeah. Oh, so, well, no, the virus is mutating. So you've got to have another one every year, just like with the flu vaccine. And cumulatively, this is designed to transform the human body, not only in terms of its nature, but also its ability to procreate. Because, there's two worlds. There's the one the population live in, and that has a certain level of knowledge. And then there's another world in the same reality, which has a very different level of knowledge. And people like me uncover the agendas by uncovering that level of knowledge. That's that's what you work towards. Uncovering what they know and thus what they plan. And if you're coming from that level of knowledge, you can predict the future, because the future is the agenda unfolding unless there's an intervention to stop it. And what you're trying to do is to take what you find here, communicate it with this world, the general population, so they see actually what's going on in the unseen, in the subconscious. So someone like Aldous Huxley, and his book Brave New World in 1932. And people like George Orwell too, and people I've quoted in the books, insiders who years ago, like 1969, predicted things that are happening now in fine detail. But you look at Aldous Huxley, and he wrote in Brave New World about the end of parenthood. This is why parents are losing more and more power over their kids, more and more the state is controlling everything. And how humans will no longer procreate, but they would be produced in what he called world state hatcheries through being incanted, not procreated in the way that we know. And because this other world, its level of knowledge allows it to project long into what we call the future, how the world is planned to be changed. And so it may sound fantastic to this world that someone in 1932 could know what's happening now and predict it in his book, Brave New World. But that's why these guys are so unbelievably accurate in predicting what's happening now, decades and decades and decades ago. And what Huxley was describing, and of course the Huxleys and Julian Huxley, his brother, was a big eugenicist, which is same as the Gates family, by the way. He was describing in 1932 in Brave New World where they want to go and where they're heading now. And that's the end of the procreating human. Now, that's why sperm counts are plummeting, and why they want to sterilize the procreation element of the human race. And this explains why we've had this explosion of transgender. I don't care what people do sexually or how they perceive themselves sexually. I have a simple philosophy: do what you like, so long as you don't impose it on anyone else. I mean, I'm about as liberal as you can bloody get from that point of view. But that's not what this transgender thing's all about. You know, I've been saying for years, if something comes out of nowhere and it's suddenly everywhere, it's the agenda. Someone's pressed a button on another stage of the agenda. And what they're doing is they're systematically confusing young people and children about their gender, who weren't confused before and wouldn't have been confused unless this manipulation to confusion had been implemented. And the process is to confuse gender on the road to fusing gender to the no gender human. This is where this is heading. Because once you don't have to procreate, you don't need male and female genders anymore. Because you're producing the human form from other means, like laboratory means, etc., that Huxley described. And thus you have a no-gender human. And this is where it's going. You're seeing the stepping stones to it. And to do that, first of all, you need to change the nature of the human body from a biological form to a synthetic biological form. And synthetic biology is now a very gathering and expanding discipline of science. But you also have to stop the form you want to replace procreating. And that's why sperm counts are plummeting. And I'm saying very strongly there'll be a sterilization agent in this vaccine going into every man and woman and child on the planet. That's what they plan.
How does AI and 5G and transhumanism play into that whole scenario?
Well, it's all the same thing, because they are planning to transform human society from what we've known. And I was born in 1952. I remember the world. There was nothing like it even is now. Nothing like. They want to transform it into what you would think of now as a sci-fi movie. I mean, it's just the extremes that we're heading into if we allow it, because the same people, the same cult that's behind all that's going on now, they are the same force that is in the midst of moving towards connecting AI to the human brain. They're openly talking about it. They're talking about 2030 and at that period, a year that comes up in relation to many different things in terms of their time scale. And the idea is to connect the human brain to AI so that, and I'm summarizing here what they're openly saying. And they're openly saying it because they can't hide it anymore. You know, there comes a point where you are under the radar, but when you actually want to introduce it, you can't hide it anymore. So you have to sales pitch it. So you go from hiding it and developing it to selling it. So what they're selling it on is connect your brain to AI and you'll become superhuman. You'll become like the gods. No, you'll become subhuman, not superhuman. You'll become post-human. That's the idea. And people like Ray Kurzweil at Google are openly saying that Once the AI is connected to your brain, AI will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking as we know it now is negligible and basically disappears. At that point, the human mind will be the AI mind. Up to this point, they've had to manipulate perception to dictate behavior. Their end game is to not even have to manipulate perception, but to become the perception via AI. And that's the point where you become the hive mind, where individuality is deleted. And that's where this is going with the mask, taking away individuality on the, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe to that end. The whole transhumanism is to replace the human. So what we call human just becomes literally a computer terminal on an AI internet of this cult and the force that's behind the cult. So we're in a period now up to 2030, and I'm being very optimistic with 2030, where we are going to decide the future of the human race, even the existence of the human race as we've known it. That's where we are. And this virus pandemic hoax has been to advance that agenda, to move things quicker. We're going to see this script unfold as we go along, unless we intervene and refuse to cooperate, in which case it cannot happen. So you've got these Silicon Valley front men and front women who are fronting up all these different things. They're all assets of the cult. You've got your Zuckerbergs and your Brins and Pages and your Wojcicki, and their role is censorship, etc. You've got Gates, who is funding, I mean, even before I get to Gates and the vaccine in the answer, he's had so many mentions because his funding record of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is just a wish list of the bloody cult. He funds it all, including Common Core education programming in America. So he's there, and his main role is to control global health policy, which means global imposition on the population policy. And then you've got Elon Musk. He's fronting up, and these are all only front men. Don't let's kid ourselves, these are running these organizations. They're only front people. So you've got Musk, he's heading up SpaceX. What is SpaceX doing? All the time, week after week after week, it's putting satellites up in low orbit to fire 5G at the Earth, to create this grid, this technological sub-reality, which will be connected to the human brain. It's literally creating a technological sub-reality to which humans are planned to be connected and controlled by, the smart grid, etc. they're talking about. He is fronting up Tesla cars, electric cars, etc. And electric cars is simply an interim position, and not a very long-term interim position. Because the idea is to introduce autonomous vehicles for everything. So you don't drive a vehicle anymore, it drives you. And the computer driving it will make sure that you can't go anywhere the system doesn't want you to go. So there's even more control. And anywhere you do go, the system will know absolutely everything about where you are. Every conversation in the car will be accessible, etc., etc. And of course, you can't have an autonomous car that runs with a petrol engine. So it has to be electric. The whole system has to be electric. So what they've done, and I take this apart in the answer as well, is they've introduced this other hoax, which absolutely interconnects with the pandemic hoax, called human-caused climate change, which allows them to centralize power dictate from the center to save the world. You look at what the centralization of power because of the pandemic and the centralization of power because of the human-caused climate change, we must save the world, and the same force is behind both. And of course, the human-caused climate change is a massive woke agenda. And they've orchestrated that woke mentality to push it through Extinction Rebellion and all these things. But to save the planet, we must go to electric cars. It's nothing to do with save the planet. It's making that transition from the petrol engine to the electrical system, which becomes the autonomous vehicle. Those autonomous vehicles are coming down the line very fast, which is why I say this interim period of a drivable electric car is going to be quite short in their plans. And all over the country now, they are changing the nature of the motorway system, what you call the freeway system in America. They're calling them smart motorways. And they're changing them in ways that are dangerous. And people can't, why are they doing that? It's so dangerous. They're changing the system of the road system of Britain for autonomous cars. That's why they're doing it, not for vehicles that we have now. And people like Uber, their business model starts off, because they've got limitless bloody funding, just like Amazon did and Facebook did and Google did as they were being bankrolled to their near monopolies. Uber's business model is autonomous taxis. And what they've been doing is destroying, with their massive limitless amount of money, don't have to make a profit, they've been destroying, if you like, petrol engine taxi firms all over the country, all over the world rather, not even the country. And the idea is that Uber eventually will be autonomous taxis, autonomous vehicles, and that's the long term, and they'll have a monopoly on it probably, and they will be owned by the same people that own Facebook and Google and YouTube. The world becomes, a very readable place once you realize that these apparent random individual companies and people are actually not random at all, and they're certainly not individual. They're connected by this cult, this global web. So you have, for instance, the World Health Organization that was created by the Rockefeller family, which is cult to its DNA, to take control of world health policy from a central point. That's why it was created. That's why a very big Rockefeller-connected Bill Gates, his family and Rockefellers have been hand and glove for way back, is now running and owning the World Health Organization on behalf of the cult. And so the narrative of the pandemic, and indeed the declaration of the pandemic, comes from the World Health Organization, an asset of the cult web. And in Silicon Valley, they openly say, your YouTubes and your Facebooks, etc., we are going to censor anything that challenges or questions this narrative from the World Health Organization. So you've got this asset of the cult making the narrative, and these assets of the cult defending the narrative from being unraveled. Once you realize these things are connected and they're not individual companies, the world starts to, or the kaleidoscope, if you like, starts to come into clarity.
I have children, 3 and 4-year-old boys, and, they've been kind of born into this trauma of this pandemic, and they go running around and, they get yelled at by adults because they're not wearing masks and they're not respecting social distance. And I just worry and wonder the world they're going to grow up in and the trauma they're going to feel over the next 6 months or a year or however long this goes on for, and what I can do as a parent and what they're trying to do with those kids.
Well, you've picked on a fundamental aspect of what is happening. They want to marginalize and take out as many old people as possible, because, I'm 68 now, and I have a radar and an experience to compare the current world with. So I can see, as most old people can, that what is happening is not the world they knew. They can see the change. But what tends to happen is when you're born into the world, you tend to accept the world you're born into as normal, understandably. And so this craziness that we are experiencing, to young kids, is all they know, and very fast becoming all they know. They want to divide the young from the old so that transfer of knowledge and experience is not made. And this is why, if you look at it, look at the what I call the climate cult, the human caused climate cult movement. It hates old people. It blames old people. Yeah, we're in this trouble because of them old people, right? Brexit. Oh, we're having Brexit because of them old people. The old people are being targeted. They're massively targeted in this pandemic hoax. And they want to drive young and old apart. And they want rid of the old, so only younger generations are with us, because they are the ones that have been through this fierce, unceasing perceptual programming through the school and university system for about 2 or 3 generations now. And it just produced the woke mentality. So why do they target the young? And now why are they targeting the very young? Because they have a time scale. They have a script. They have a sequence of events. And when they want to complete this transformation in the way I've described to this completely unrecognizable sci-fi world, the young today will be in adulthood or entering adulthood. And so they need those kids today so perceptually programmed that they will submit to anything when the time comes to complete the end game. You know, I said earlier, Brian, I do understand why people get frightened and intimidated to challenge authority or refuse to cooperate with it. But I do have a job sometimes understanding how parents can see what's being done to their kids now and can stand around and allow it to happen. I was in a shop the other day before you had to wear masks, and I was talking to the lady behind the counter. There's no one else in there but me and her. And I was making the point, as I try to all the time, what a load of nonsense this is. And she said, you know, my boy was basically born and very, very young when this thing came in. She said, and during the lockdown, you know, he was getting older and stuff like that. But she said when we came out of lockdown, she said he met another child. She said, and he didn't know what to do. He had no idea how to respond, because that natural bond and interaction of children that we've become used to, it had been deleted from him. He didn't know what to do. And when you see little kids who have no chance of dying of this disease, even if it exists, which it doesn't, in little boxes in playgrounds, away from each other so they can't come out of them. When you see little kids sitting on X's outside the school, 6 feet apart, waiting for their masked parents in line 6 feet apart to come and pick them up. What the hell is that going to do to their psychology? What kind of mind are they going to grow up in? What interaction is there going to be? What love is there going to be when they're being taught to perceive their other children and fellow human beings as a danger? Which is another thing. We are being manipulated to see each other as dangerous. What is the climate cult saying? Humans are dangerous. You see that because they're controlled by the same force, they have the same basic sales pitch. And the psychology consequences for kids being put through this is almost unimaginable. And like I say, where they want this to go, and some of them are already talking about it. Do you know there are schools in this country, as there are in America, but the schools in this country who are saying that when schools go back in September, I doubt it will be for that long, then all the pupils have to wear masks all day. Now, any head teacher or anyone associated with children who says that should be banned from having anything to do with control over children for the rest of their entirety. So where it's going, because of what they plan to throw at us, not just the kitchen sink, but the bathroom sink, the bath, the lot in this winter, is they want to justify kids in school all day with masks on their face and social distance, which is contradiction in terms. And the effect on their psychology, the effect in the way they see each other, the way that they see humanity in general, is going to create generations of people which are unrecognizable from human generations before. And the parents should not be sitting by and watching it happen. Any school that says a child must wear a mask all day should be boycotted 100% until it stops. But what they'll do is that vast numbers of people, they'll send their kids to school and play an acquiescent part in the destruction and rewiring of their own child's psyche. And by the way, the more that people wear masks, the more they're breathing in their own, including kids, the more they're breathing in their own carbon dioxide, the more they're not breathing in enough oxygen, the more cumulatively that's going to cause respiratory disease. And they're going to call it COVID-19. And what they're doing is creating disease with these masks. That they can then say there's been an explosion of COVID-19, when it's actually respiratory disease that comes from not enough oxygen, breathing in your own carbon dioxide, which your body's trying to expel. Carbon dioxide is great for the natural world. It's bad for humans. And also, you're breathing in your own bacteria as well. And so everything is like interconnected. And then you look at 5G, and I go into this in the book as well. 5G at 60 gigahertz, well known this is, at 60 gigahertz, 5G interacts with the oxygen molecule and stops the body and the bloodstream being able to absorb oxygen at the same rate as we optimally need. So you've got 5G going up everywhere. And by the way, 5G is at its least impact at the moment because it's still being rolled out around the world, and there is a limited number of 5G devices up to this point. The more 5G devices are bought and used, every time you activate one of these devices, it creates a beam connection, if you like, with the source on the frequency that it's operating on. So the more and more people who use 5G devices, the more the atmosphere is going to be awash with 5G. And the more devices, the more impact on health and psychology it's going to have. And at 60 gigahertz, you've got this interaction with the oxygen molecule, which prevents the body taking on the level of oxygen that it needs. Add that to the mass. Can you see a pattern here? Denying oxygen to people, and that has enormous list of potential health consequences, not least respiratory, which will be COVID-19. Just think of a kid sitting in a classroom for hours and hours a day, breathing in not enough oxygen and far too much carbon dioxide. What's that going to do to them?
Take me to 2022, August, 2 years from now. And let's assume, God forbid, that we've acquiesced every single step of the way. What does this world look like?
If you take China today and multiply it 2 or 3 times, that's where we'll be.
Multiply China?
Oh, yeah. I mean, China's only where China is now. The technological control system of this smart grid is only in its infancy even now. And you see, the brain processes information electrically and electromagnetically. It communicates with the rest of the body electrically and electromagnetically. And by 2022, the 5G impact on the human environment will be vastly more than it is now. And I've been pointing out for so long now, decades, that the body is an antenna. It's, the whole foundation of the body is a waveform information field from which the body we see is a projection. So any electromagnetic frequencies that adversely impact on the wave electromagnetic frequency balance of the body field is going to have psychological and what we call physical effects. Got to. And we're seeing it more and more. I mean, when I grew up in the 50s, you compare the technologically generated electromagnetic atmosphere then to now, it's unimaginable. You're talking about millions of times greater. And that's affected health in many and various ways. And the brain processes information, not only electromagnetically, but within a certain frequency band. And if you can access that frequency band with externally generated frequencies, it's been well known. It's been done by governments like the Russian government, etc. Way back in the 50s, it was going on. If you can get your frequency right, you can plant thoughts and perceptions in the minds of people, which they will then experience as their own thoughts and their own decisions, but actually externally being put in. So the more you build this grid of frequency, this sub-reality, and by 2022 it will be some way advanced from what it is now, your potential to control the human mind will be greatly advanced even from what it is now. And in terms of technological control, if we do keep acquiescing, then anyone that's not vaccinated will be massively limited in what they can do with their lives. And those that have been vaccinated, by 2022, will at least be starting to feel the effects or experience the effects of what is in the vaccine. Because like I say, the first quote COVID-19 vaccine will only be number one. They're going to claim it's necessary every year after that. And cumulatively, it's going to change the human mind and it's going to change the human body. But none of this has to happen if people will only say no now. But of course, you reach a point in your takeover of human perception, where you have so much control that there won't even be any resistance, because you won't even manifest the thought to resist or the thought to say no, because you're not in control of your mind anymore. This is the progression towards complete AI control of the human mind. So when I say, I do understand why people are frightened to say no, but if we don't, the consequences are going to be unthinkable. I'm not messing about. I'm not, talking symbolically. We are literally at the cusp between what remains of human freedom and the end, completely the end of human freedom, even the ability to think what you choose to think. Now is the time to choose, because we're heading towards the time when you won't be able to choose, because you won't be in control of your own mind to make those choices.
In all of your 30 years studying this, did you ever expect such an accelerated period like we've seen in 2020?
It has happened very, very quickly in 2020, but what's the outcome of it? The outcome of it is no surprise to me at all. I was writing about the basic themes of this in the mid-1990s. So I started to uncover this stuff. I've covered it a hell of a lot since, but I started to uncover all the basic foundation themes by then of where it was meant to go. And so it's no surprise what's happening to me at all. Bit surprised in the speed of it, and the speed of it has come from the speed of acquiescence, because it didn't have to move this quickly.
That surprised you?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure even the cult have been surprised at the speed of acquiescence. But where they want to go, I've known about that for a very, very long time. I've been trying to get across, taking it out of this hidden into the public arena. And of course, they've been laughed at and been ridiculed and been dismissed. And this is why I said a long time ago, it's got to get really bad before we can turn this around, because only then will people realize that actually this is not some theory, this is fact, and this is real, and this is happening. And the scale of what's going on is so massive. There's such a chasm between what's going on and what most people think is going on. That chasm is a big gap to jump. And it really can only be jumped. It can only be seen by things becoming so bad that actually you can't deny it anymore. And that's what's happened to a lot of people in the last few months, which is why so many more people are looking at this information and starting to do their own research, which is brilliant, compared with what was there before. And I've been reading some articles this week, which I found very interesting. Over the last 20 years or so, I've been writing about what I call a mind virus. A mind virus that takes over the human mind via the subconscious and feeds perceptions out of the subconscious into the conscious mind, which the conscious mind takes to be its own thoughts and perceptions. This mind virus, and I use the word virus in terms of a computer virus taking over a system, works in ways that isolate what I call five sense mind from the greater consciousness. And I would symbolize it like this, as I have in some of the books. You've got someone at a computer, and you've got the keyboard and you've got the mouse. And that is symbolic of expanded consciousness. And then you've got the computer, which is symbolic of five sense mind, that level of us that's directly interacting with this reality. And if you get a computer virus, basically you've got the person at the keyboard banging the keys and tapping the mouse. The computer's not responding. It's gone its own way. The virus has taken it over. And the virus is now driving the, if you like, behavior of the computer. The operator's lost control. And that is precisely the effect of this mind virus. It isolates five-sense mind through the subconscious from expanded consciousness. And like I say, I've been writing about that for decades. And then in the last week, I came across some articles about a Native American concept called Wetiko. And some Native American tribes call it Wetiko. Some call it a name very close to that, but it's the same concept. I'll call it Wetiko. And Wetiko, they say, is what I would call a mind virus, and what they call a mind blindness that takes over the minds of people and holds them, what I would call, in five-sense reality only. And it's an interesting description in this Wetiko. It's a mind blindness that convinces the conscious mind that it is not blind. Now, I'm seeing that everywhere during this pandemic, because so much that has been going on in the subconscious before this has been brought to the surface by all this. That's why you're starting to see things and see responses and behavior that are like, what? But actually it's already always been there. It's just been brought to the surface now where you can see it. And I see this in people who are blind in their mind to what's actually happening, but have totally convinced themselves not only are they not blind to what's happening, but they know what is happening. This is classic Wetiko possession, if you like. So I hear people speaking with confidence and with assurance about what's happening. And what's coming out of their mind is simply a repetition of the official version of what's happening. But they think they've worked it out because their mind is blind, but they think it's not. And the other interesting thing about this Wetiko, which fits with my stuff too, is they say that this Wetiko mind possession, if you like, operates in the subconscious. It has to. It has to hide itself from the conscious mind, because once the conscious mind is aware of it, the influence is gone. You know, if I'm manipulating you behind your back, I can get away with it. But once you know I'm manipulating you, I can't get away with it, right? Because the manipulation has been brought out of the subconscious and the unseen into the seen, and now you can deal with it. And what they say about this Wetiko mind virus, or mind blindness, is that once you acknowledge that it exists, and once you acknowledge its influence and impact on your perceptions, it's gone. Its influence is finished, because you've brought it out of the subconscious into the conscious, and once this comes into the conscious, it's finished. No influence. And interestingly, this is precisely what happens with subliminal advertising and subliminal images. Subliminal means below threshold, below the threshold of the conscious mind. It's speaking to the subconscious. So you'll see an image, it could be an advertisement, and your conscious mind will see the image as it appears to be. But the overwhelming majority of people will not see the subliminal insert that's hidden. And so its impact is talking to your subconscious, and they will put things in to talk to the subconscious in the advert, which only kind of impact when you're walking down the supermarket aisle, and for some reason you're kind of attracted to this product, which you've never been attracted to before. Oh, what's this? And you pick it up and you look at it. That's been the subliminal image in the advert, which has gone into the subconscious, and that's come through the conscious mind, being triggered by the product you see, and that's how the impact works. But where I'm going with this is this, and I've experienced this myself. I know it's true. When you're shown an image with a subliminal, but you're not the subliminal's not pointed out, and you just see the image. Okay, so you don't see the subliminal. But when someone comes along and says, "Look, there's the subliminal there," every time for the rest of your life, when you look at that image, the subliminal insert's the first thing you see, because it's been brought out of the subconscious, the unconscious, into the conscious mind, and it can't hide anymore because the conscious mind's aware of it. So once we realize, this is one of the impacts of putting this information out, and the stuff we're talking about today is you're bringing out of the hidden, out of the unconscious, and you're saying to the conscious mind, look at this subliminal. And then people start to see it in their everyday lives. They start to get what's happening because they're now conscious of it. And this whole concept of this mind blindness, what I call the mind virus, Wetiko, in a Native American the concept, is that once you become aware of this mind blindness and this effect on your perceptions, its impact is gone, just like the impact of the subliminal is gone once the conscious mind is aware of it. I found it fascinating to read this whole Wetiko concept when I've got the same basic themes from completely different sources. And if you look at other cultures around the world, ancient cultures, you'll find they'll have the same concept. And I've written in my books about what the Gnostic people called archons. And then you look at what the Islamic people called jinn, what the Zulus call the Chitahuri. And these are different names for a hidden force that's manipulating humanity. And it does it through connecting and manipulating the human mind. So the concept of Wetiko, the concept of the mind virus, is everywhere under different names. And if we can free ourselves of that, game over. Because that is what is controlling people via their perceptions.
And are we going to, David? Are you optimistic about the future?
I wouldn't keep going. Well, I probably would, actually. I'm a stubborn bugger, but I wouldn't keep going, shall we say, if it was a lost cause. It's not a lost cause. And for reasons I talked about earlier, not only is this avoidable, not only is it changeable, it can be changed in a dramatically short time just by changing our approach from acquiescing to not acquiescing. It's as simple as that. Let me just explain one thing here, Brian. Maybe we'll get into why acquiescence is so important to address. How can a few people in this cult dictate to the lives of billions like this? Think of a pyramid. The top of the pyramid, you've got the cult. Tiny few people in relation to the population. And this pyramid, which is human society, is hierarchical. So the cult at the top of the pyramid imposes its agenda on the next level, which acquiesces to that imposition, and it itself then imposes on the next level. Now, as you come down this pyramid, you're very few steps down before you reach the point where the hierarchy doesn't even know there's a cult. Only these higher in around the spider, as I call it, levels, know that there's a cult, unless you work your ass off for 30 years to uncover it. And so you then hit a level where they're not aware of where this is coming from, but the same sequence continues. So this level will impose on this level, which acquiesces to the level above and imposes on the level below. And this goes down the pyramid, imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence, until at the bottom of the pyramid, symbolically, you meet the mass of human society, the population. Now, if we acquiesce to the level of the pyramid that's imposing on us, like your governments, etc., then we complete a circuit. We complete a circuit between the population and the tiny few in the cult, which has allowed the agenda of the cult to impose its will on the entire population, purely by this sequence of imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence. So this is why I've gone on about that so much in this chat, because if we will break that circuit by not acquiescing to that level seeking to impose upon us, we break the circuit. And no longer are the cult at the top of the pyramid imposing their will on the population, because we have broken the connection. And we've broken it simply by ceasing to acquiesce to the level of imposition imposing on us. And if we did that, if we put down the fault lines there to divide us of race and sexuality, I don't care what you do with your dick. I don't care if you haven't got a dick. I don't care what you do with it, so long as the receiver is okay with it. I don't care. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you follow. I'm not bothered. It's just a brief experience for the consciousness not only that you are, but the consciousness that we all are. And we have to be manipulated into these self-identities of labels so that all this potential to divide and rule us is there, because it's essential. So let's put it down. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what you call yourself. Just don't impose it on anyone else that doesn't want it imposed upon them. And let's realize that we're all the target of the same force, and that there are billions of us and a handful of it, and thus I think I see a way out of this. And if we come together in unity and we cooperate in protecting our own freedom and the freedom of each other, it's over. It's over. They can't impose what they want if we do that. And so if you are part of the divide and rule, if you are an anti-hate Antifa with hatred on your face and a baton in your hand, then don't tell me you are anti-system. Don't tell me you are anti-establishment. You are the establishment. You are the foot soldiers, the stormtroopers of the establishment you claim to oppose, because anyone that embarks and is playing a part in dividing and ruling the population, setting it at war with itself, censoring the free flow of information, you are doing the cult's bidding. And when you've done its bidding to the point where it gets the control that it wants, you will then be the target, which is why revolutions invariably consume their own children.
And all of this is covered in the answer.
In the answer. The answer is in there. It's multi-leveled, but there's a central core. And it's not a case of is the answer not there? It's whether we're prepared to take it. And that's the choice, my God, we've got to make, and we've got to make it quick.
You always leave us with some hope at the end of these conversations, David. You always talk about moving forward, out of love and not fear, and how we are this, infinite expression of consciousness, having just a brief experience here. And I always hope people can understand that, but it's hard to get people to really feel that sometimes.
Well, it's hard because one of the great targets of the cult, because it knows how the human form works, is the heart. I'm not talking about the physical heart, though they are connected. I'm talking about the heart vortex within the human energy field, the heart chakra, or wheel of light, as they call it in the East. And we think of love in a certain way, being attracted to somebody or loving your kids. But actually, what I'm talking about, and I talk about this a lot in the answer, it's very different. It includes that, of course, but love in its true sense does not say, I want the best for my kids, although we do, of course we do. It says, I want the best for everybody. And when you open this, it's not just love in the sense that people perceive it. It opens you to infinity. It's our connection to all that is, has been, and ever can be. And through that connection, you have insight, you have knowing. When people have intuitive knowing, where do their hands go? Look, mate, I just know. They don't say, I just know. They're saying, I'm thinking. This thinks because it doesn't know. This knows because it does know, because it's connected to that which does know. And when you open your heart, you're opening your connection to a level of awareness that allows you, first of all, to see the connections, because you're coming from that level where everything is one. Therefore, you can see the connections in the reality you're experiencing. But one definition I would give for this kind of love is the absence of fear. I would call evil the absence of love. I think that's what evil is. It's the absence of love. You infuse love into evil, it's not evil anymore. It's the absence of love. And this is what this cult is. It's the absence of love. That's why it does what it does. But it's also the absence of fear. Because once you open to this insight, this self-identity, you know there's nothing to fear. Because whatever happens, whatever experiences we're having, there'll be another one along in a minute, we are always an expression, a point of attention within all that is, has been, and ever can be. And however bad the experience we're currently having, that is what we always are. All that is, has been, and ever can be. And so this does not fear. This will always do what it knows to be right, and therefore does not consider consequences for doing what it knows to be right, because it would never consider doing anything but what it knows to be right. Thus, consequences are irrelevant. This says, I'd like to do this, but what are the consequences? And you'll always find a list of consequences why you wouldn't do it. This says, I do what I know to be right. Consequences, therefore, are not even a conversation. And one of the great fears that people have, well, it's the foundation fear, I think, is the fear of the unknown, which manifests as the fear of death. And the manipulation of the fear of death is the manipulation of this pandemic. It's why people have been frozen in fear, because they fear death. It's why doctors have so much power. Save me, doctor. Well, actually, you are all that is, has been, and ever can be, and always will be. You're just having a brief experience. So this is without fear. It doesn't consider consequences. What I mean by that is it knows that if you cross the road in front of a truck, you're going to get damaged. But I mean consequences of what will people do or think or say about me, what will happen to me for doing what I know to be right. It doesn't even consider those consequences. I never consider them. I never consider them. Because to consider them is to consider not doing what I know to be right, not having it. And because you reach this point of connection and this point of insight, and I'm not sitting cross-legged on a mountain like the bloody Buddha. Anyone can do this. It's our natural state. We're being manipulated into an unnatural state. This is what I'm describing as our natural state. When you open your heart, you know that death is nothing except a transfer of attention. That's all it is. I've got a picture in the answer, and it's of a bloke with a headset, a virtual reality headset, and he's just taking it off and looking around. And I put a caption underneath, "My God, I've just died." Because that is what death is, basically. It's taking the headset off. It's moving out of this brief experience into the expansive true self. So when you open this, all this comes to you. You know all this. And therefore, this would never be intimidated by authority seeking to impose itself upon you when you know it's not justified and it's about destroying your freedom. This is freedom. It's the freedom of knowing that the scale of who we really are. It's the freedom of connecting with all that is. This is not going to be frightened of Boris fricking Johnson and Matt bloody Hancock or Fauci or Gates or any of them. They're irrelevant to it in terms of what it does. And I tell you, when there's a revolution of this, acquiescence will stop. This would never acquiesce to impositions on freedom. Never do it. Always does what it knows to be right. This is the revolution. This will change everything. And anyone can do it.
But yet so many of us are disconnected from this, even though it's right there.
I
feel it when you talk about it, David.
Yeah. This is the mind blindness. One of the things it seeks to do, and the cult seeks to do, is shut this down. It cannot affect the energy of love in the sense that I'm talking about, because it's itself on such a low frequency. No way that it can impact in any way on this frequency. But what it seeks to do is stop this manifesting by closing the heart. And the heart is the center of everything. And people talk about the physical heart, okay, but if you go back, what they're really talking about is this heart, the energetic heart, the connection out there. And you look at all the things, all the symbolism through the ages and still today relating to this. Open heart, heart of stone, broken heart. You look at all the phrases relating to the heart, and it's because this is the center of everything. And we've been manipulated to think this is the center of everything. It's not. Do you know that the heart is the biggest electromagnetic field, most powerful electromagnetic field in the body? And this, when it's open, dominates the head. What do people say all the time? What does your head say? Okay, what does your heart say? And they say very different things, because this is out there and this is down here. And when this opens, everything changes, because you change. Everything about you changes. It's what happened to me a long time ago, and changed my life.
And everyone can access this whenever they want.
Anytime they want. And what I would say is, ditch the bloody labels. Stop identifying with labels. They are a brief experience. Even your name is a brief experience. You are the consciousness having the experience. So when someone says to you, who are you? You are all that is, has been, and ever can be, having an experience. What you call yourself, if you meet someone and people say, well, who are you? They'll give you their name, they'll give you their job, they might give you their family background, their family history, where they went to school. That's what they're saying they are. Who are you? But that's just what they've experienced. Who am I? All that is, has been, and ever can be, having an experience called David Icke. Very brief, very interesting. And who are you? Brian Rose. No. All that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief experience called Brian Rose. And the point of attention that I am is an expression of the same consciousness that the point of attention that you are is. And the same with all of us. So racism and all these isms and all these divisions are not only undesirable, they are confirmation that those that go down that road are utterly clueless about the nature of reality and the nature of who they really are. And I see anti-racists who are utterly obsessed with race when it's just a brief experience. That's all it is. You are what is having the experience. And when that penny drops and this, as a result, opens, game over. Game over. But not until.
Well, if we keep having conversations like this, then it might actually happen, David.
We're working on it, eh? And I know a lot of other people are as well. So
yeah,
you keep going, because the alternative is to not keep going, and that is unthinkable and certainly won't happen here.
What's next for you, David?
Well, I'm actually going to do in September a live 4-hour presentation with all my illustrations, in which I'm going to go pull all this together, including the, some of the stuff we've been talking about here and more. I was supposed to be talking in November to about 4,000 or 5,000 people in Manchester, but of course, so we pulled it forward, and I won't do it with an audience, but I will do it live to anyone who wants to see it. And that's on September the 9th. Details at davidicke.com very soon, I hope.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I love that. The book is The Answer. People can pick it up on davidicke.com. There's also a link below they can click as well. Grab it, read it, study it. My favorite part of our conversations, David, are the end. When you show us how we can overcome all of this stuff by opening our hearts. And I always tell people, the reason I know that David Icke is the real deal is because he doesn't try to get you to hate someone or fear someone in order to get you to do something. That's the difference between you and everyone else out there. Governments, cult leaders, all these other people. They need you to hate something or fear something, and that makes you do something.
Exactly.
And you say, love, and then make your own decision, do your own research, and then do what you think is right.
No one needs love more than the cult, because its very being is the absence of love. And I would just say this, you're in a room with a group of people. Whether it's a nice experience or whether it's an unpleasant experience depends on the perceptions of the people involved, because they dictate the behavior of the people involved, and whether it's a nice experience or a bad experience. Now just project that to the human race and getting on for 8 billion people. Human society is merely a projection of the collective human state of perception. We change our perceptions, we change our experience, we change our society. And we have reached a point of subjugation by the few simply because we've given our power to the few. That's the only reason the world is as it is now. And we can look for solutions, or we can be sensible and we can remove the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem is human acquiescence with our own enslavement. Change that, change the world.
David, thank you.
Pleasure, mate.
I don't know what we would have done this year in 2020 without these 5 conversations. I don't know what the world would have done, but thank God for David Icke. So
very kind.
I appreciate everything you've done. I appreciate your 30 years of research. There's nobody who can do this like you do it. There's nobody who can boil it down and break it down and leave us with a message of hope and positivity and direction. So thank you. Thank you for coming and making these things happen. Thanks for coming to London, and thanks for putting this out there. You've changed so many people's minds and so many people's lives. So I really appreciate you.
Always a pleasure, Brian.
All right. And I would say to anybody watching, share this video. Share this to your social, to your friends. Share this to someone who needs to open their heart, who's living in fear, who's angry at other groups or is divided or confused or in fear of their health or all of these things. Just share this video and ask them to watch it to the end, and then see what they think. See if they can open up their heart. That's what I would say to everybody. So share that. Also, we'll clip this into a bunch of pieces. So if they want to share various clips of this on social media, just beware. Then put out these messages as well, so people can get a taste of David's message and then come back. So I would say that. DavidIcke.com for the book. Click on the link below. Share this. Thank you to everybody at Digital Freedom Platform, the London Real Army, all of our donors for making this happen, and we appreciate them. And until next time, David, we're going to do this again.
Oh, yes.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you.
Cheers, mate. Pleasure.